Greetings, welcome back to our study on becoming God's people. This week we are looking at Exodus 34, at least in my reflection, the first part of Exodus 34, God's response to the golden calf incident. But between Exodus 32 and 34, we have a series of events that we probably ought to talk about. Last time I talked about Israel panicking and not having Moses, and their response to that is the golden calf. Well, Moses' response to them, God sends Moses down off the mountain, and Moses shatters the tablets of stone, which have the Ten Commandments on them, shatters them on the golden calf and grinds it up. Now, these are two separate signs and symbols, and they are both very meaningful, very profound. The first is that Moses shattering the tablets is a symbol that the covenant is broken. So Israel, essentially, the day they get the covenant, the day they sign on board to say, we are God's people, they act in such a way that it breaks the covenant. Now, this is a very important element for us. The covenant should be broken. It should be nullified. God should be free of the covenant. But Exodus 34 shows us something about God, because the covenant is not voided. The covenant is not nullified. The covenant is reinstated. So Moses' act as the intermediary between God and the people is to say the covenant has been nullified. God's act is to reinstate it. This is important for us to think about. The prophet has said this covenant is no longer valid, but God doesn't go down that road. That's important for us. That's a topic to reflect on when we fall short of the mark, when we, like the Israelites, make covenant and then break covenant instantly. The idea that what should happen is God should leave the people because they have broken the covenant, but that's not what happens. The other sign act that happens in this passage is Moses grinds the calf into powder, into gold dust, and then mixes it with, or spreads it into, the water supply. This is very similar, and there's a lot of language that overlaps here. That if you're invested in the Hebrew, you'll see, but if you're reading the English, it's not as evident. But there's a lot of language that overlaps with the prescription for a trial for a woman suspected of adultery, where you take dust from the floor of the sanctuary and mix it with water, and she drinks it. And if nothing happens, she is innocent of the adultery. But if she is guilty of the adultery, she will become sick in some way. So what Moses seems to be doing is grinding the calf into powder, mixing it with the water supply, and it's a this is meant to be a test for the Israelites about who is guilty of this sin and who is not. The text does not tell us this. The text does not go into this detail, but it seems to be the background behind it. And when Moses calls on the Levites to pick up the sword and kill people immediately after this event where they drink the water, what we seem to be seeing is the Levites are called upon to kill those individuals who have gotten sick from drinking the water. Now, this is a little bit of an assumption because the text does not say it, but there's an implication that the people that the Levites are killing are the ones that the test of the water have proven guilty. So there is a belief that that drinking the water will show that they have been in some way been contaminated by this sin, and those are the people that the Levites are to target. Now, that's kind of important in and of itself, that the people who are guilty are the ones who are killed, and the people who just went along with it innocently are not. There's also this underlying theme that we haven't seen yet, but Aaron is already recognized as someone who is in charge of the priestly activities. He's the one who makes the golden calf. That's a priestly activity. And it's the Levites who strike down the people. This is setting them apart as people with special roles for God. They are the ones who are going to emphasize proper worship to God. That's part of what the text is doing here by showing that the Levites step forward to institute judgment. They are the ones tasked with maintaining proper worship to God, and that is going to be their function from now on. They are going to be the ones who carry out the ritualistic duties for the tabernacle and are supportive of Israel's priests, who are a special class that comes out of the Levites in the future. So this incident of the golden calf sets us up for where the priesthood comes from and how the priesthood is to interact with the people. We have this idea that the people have sinned, they have been tested, they have been found, the guilty parties have been identified, they have been abolished, and the people who are supposed to now be in charge of God's temple, God's tabernacle, they have been identified. That is the end of the kind of that golden calf story. Then we have this transitional note that talks about Moses' intercession on behalf of the people. And this is important because Moses, when God sent Moses to the people way back in the early chapters of Exodus, Moses complained and did not want to go. And here we see that Moses intercedes for the people, and every one of his intercessions matches to one of his complaints. So he complains 5 times, he intercedes 5 times. He has gone from the person who desperately did not want to go to the people to the person who intercedes on their behalf and changes God's mind. He has now inherited the role that God wanted for him back at the beginning, where God said, go to the people and be the intermediary between me and the people. Moses said no. Now, when the people need the intermediary, Moses steps up and is that intermediary to work with God on their behalf. So Moses here is accepting his role. He's accepting his duty and what he was called for in the beginning of the passage. We also see him set up a private tent. The preceding chapters have been about setting up a tent of meeting, a place for the people to gather where they can worship God and they can interact with God. Here Moses is setting up a private version just for himself. Why? He is the innocent one. He has not participated in the covenant breaking of the golden calf. He is still worthy of having that face-to-face contact with God. So he sets up a private tent that he alone is allowed to visit. He and Joshua visit because the people are not worthy of God's presence. And it's kind of showing that the one who is not participating in the guilt and the idolatry is the one who is able to enter God's presence. And that's who we should strive to be. We should strive to be the Moses who keeps the covenant, who intercedes for the people, and who therefore is able to enter into the tent of God's presence. That's a lot of it. We're setting that up. God has agreed not to kill the people, and Moses goes back up in the mountain at the first part of Exodus 34. And so we're going to look at that in the reflection and how God responds in compassion and mercy instead of justice and judgment, and what that means. So I hope this all makes sense to you. Again, if you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to me. You can send me ideas for future videos. I'd look forward to hearing you. And until we meet again, hope that you have a blessed day.